Alrighty guys, so there is a brand new Raiden Shogun banner out, and before we get into the video, just a quick tip. There are some things coming in 3.4 that might make you want to skip. We're going to go over the banners in detail, talk about them, but just as a tip, there might be some things coming out you might want to see. So the new banners are live, and we want to talk about them a little bit. So let's go ahead and check them out real quick. Okay, first banner on the list, we have the Raiden Shogun wet character banner here. Raiden Shogun is going to pair, of course, with the Ayato character banner. We have Sayu paired along with Rosaria and Sarah. So based on this banner just by itself, for the 4 stars alone, this character banner is decent. Because getting a Sayu is always helpful, just if you don't have it yet, right? But if you go on to get Sayu Constellations, she's not very good. But she's really good for usefulness for being a taxi. Rosaria, really good for damage after C2, and then tops out around C5 for damage. Good for Eula teams, good for reverse melt compositions. There's a lot of like high damage teams that just revolve around her damage too, with Zhang Ling and 4 stars. So she's a good character. She's not a bad one at all. And she's the upgraded version of Kaio because she has a teleport and everything. But the main issue with her is that she of course has less damage than Kaio as max potential, because her damage is kind of topped out at C5 where Kaio's topped out at C6. So reality wise, I usually choose Kaio over Rosaria in DPS compositions for DPS, but like most people don't have Kaio. So I mean, if you wanted an option that's good cryo DPS, she's the only one really for easy accessibility. And then Sarah. Well, Sarah's a C0 or C6 character, and to be honest with you, really only good for Raiden Shogun. Like, you could try it with Kaching, it's okay. You can try it with Beto, it's okay. You can try it with Fischl, it's okay. But the problem is that when Sarah buffs a target, the buff will only last for like 6 seconds for the increase that's at C6. And that really only affects Raiden Shogun pretty heavily for the big burst damage that she's gonna do, and the small auto attack string afterwards. So typically for other characters, the C6 doesn't really buff heavily enough, and the attack boost that she provides is significantly lower than Bennett's. So all in all, she's kind of an only for Raiden Shogun carry, and maybe Kaching if you want to. But for Beto, the crit damage that you provide doesn't snapshot on the C6. It just doesn't do anything. So if you haven't seen the C6, the Constellation 1 just gives you a lower cooldown decrease and stuff. It doesn't really help that much. C2 makes it so that you can get a buff at the location for a secondary buff, but it doesn't really help. Again, the character's kit this allows you to press E to get a buff rather than press E and then charge attack, which is kind of nice, but it's not super helpful. C4 is quite good for damage ability, but it only really pairs with C6. So the C6 gives you a 60% electro crit damage boost, but that will only last the duration of the actual buff that you have. And the problem with this buff in particular is this buff doesn't snapshot. So for Sarah in particular, since when you're using a character with like Beto that has a long duration buff, it's not very good. When using it for Fischl, again, not very good, kind of hard to get on Fischl or something like that. And then in Yaemiko, it's good for Yaemiko's burst ability when you're dropping a burst, but typically not good for Yaemiko after the fact. Other characters in Genshin, they're for Electro characters, don't really rely on crit chance and crit damage too heavily, and Razor is only going to get boosted from part of his damage. Lisa's a weird character that could benefit from Sarah, but the switching between the characters over and over again doesn't really seem to be super helpful, because the only part of her, the big part about Lisa for damage is her elemental burst, and you need that thing to snapshot to do massive amounts of damage, and you don't want to keep funneling buffs to Lisa to make her do damage. So Sarah overall as a character is one of the crazy high damage characters that also does high damage boosting for like a burst rotation on Raiden, but not a super necessary character for 90% of team compositions. It's really only a buffer for Raiden, and I really like this character and I think she's great. The problem is that she's not super necessary. Regarding the characters Raiden and Ayato, if you wanted to talk about either one of these characters, I've played both of these characters for about a year or so. Ayato has been super helpful on every single account that I've had him on, but I also have Haran on every single account. And when I did switch over to Blacksword to test him out for like a week or so and try out how good a Blacksword was on him, it was fine. But I have a refined 5 Blacksword, so if you're a battle pass player that has a refined 5 Blacksword, he's a pretty good character for roaming around the world and doing damage. But you do see a significant increase when going to Haran. The damage increase I think is somewhere between 15 to 17% depending on how you do the math, based on attack. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. And for Raiden Shogun, she's not very good in open world, because the problem of her is that you burst something in open world and they instantly die, and then you don't get to auto attack them. So the problem is she's too strong for open world. So I find this character is kind of an abyss only character and not really good for too much else besides a little bit of domains. Like, she's good in certain domain farming, but not a lot of domain farming. And if you're going to be farming her for her own set for the emblem domain, you may know this already, but the emblem domain farming with Raiden sucks ass. So farming her for her own set is really problematic. As far as Ayato goes, he's good on 3 different sets for the Gladiator set, the Echo set, and the Hydro set. The Echo set being the best, but that set, of course, has been widely touted as a big issue. The big issue is if you have too high of a ping, the proc doesn't work. So if you're wondering if he's a good character without his set, the answer is yes. If you have a Jade Cutter or a different weapon on him, like a Mist Splitter, those weapons are going to be far better suited for the Hydro set. And if you're a player that ends up having the Haran, you're going to be best off with the Echo set. The Mist Splitter does okay on him, but the problem with the Mist Splitter is you don't really get to retain all the stacks. You only get like 2 out of 3 stacks most of the time when using Ayato. You'll understand how that works when you use a burst rotation on him and why you're only getting 2 out of 3 after you like read the passive and understand what you're supposed to be doing in each part of the rotation. All right, and the other thing is, I get asked this a lot on my stream about the Echo set in particular. There is a lag issue with this set. If you're constantly over 250 ping, this set doesn't work. If you're over 200, there are times it won't work. And if you're under 200, it's fine. Okay? And that's on consistent latency, right? If you spike every so often on latency, your damage goes down regardless of the set you're using, right? So this only has a problem with proc frequency if you have consistent bad latency at a high level. If you lag a little bit, obviously your damage is going to be lagged during that time frame no matter what. Between the 2 characters, between Raiden and Ayato, my recommendation for this banner is actually to skip these 2 characters right now. And that has everything to do with what the Lantern Rite Festival coming next month. Because unless you're a player that had one of 3 groups of players, the first group of players is going to be players that have been waiting for Raiden Shogun for a long time. They want to get the C2. They want to go for it. They want this character a lot. Those players, yeah, go for it, man. I don't really recommend Raiden C2 because you get too strong. It's not really the best choice to be way too strong in Genshin. You end up feeling like every character out there is just like way too weak when you see them in a new character showcase. You look at them like, no, my Raiden C2 is a little bit better. So you end up like not wanting that. Second group of players that, you know, should go for Raiden Shogun, brand new players that just start out that are looking for a 5-star. I mean, you kind of just need a 5-star in general when you start Genshin, just one. This banner's okay for you guys, sure. Raiden or Ayato is a good choice depending on the character that you think is cooler. Either one would work out. Ayato is not really as good for free to play because his weapon access is kind of limited to if you spend on the game or if you're on a weapon banner or you're lucky on a weapon banner. So I wouldn't recommend Ayato for a fully free to play player unless you're considering weapon banner as well in some type of game. For Raiden Shogun, she's good on free-to-play weapons, but the problem with her is weapon access for the other characters. A lot of people end up using Dragon's Bane on their Xiangling while using the catch on Raiden Shogun for 4-star options. Eventually, when you do get a 5-star weapon, it's a lot better to use that on Raiden Shogun and then transferring the catch over to your Xiangling. But in essence, this character is a non-necessary character that does a lot of work for the first year of Genshin. But the reason you should skip is basically because of the character banners and weapon banners coming out next patch that have been waited on for over a year. Raiden Shogun comes out every like 4 to 6 months. So this is a good time to skip because the other thing that's coming out, you may have waited on for even longer. So just know that because the Lantern Rite Festival is coming out next month, this could be a skip for you just for that reason. Okay. I don't want to be a leaker, but you know, it's really good. Okay, weapon banner. All right, so the weapon banner is the other thing we got to talk about today. The weapon banner, we have the Haran and the Engulfing Lightning. The Haran is a super good weapon and is on par, a little bit weaker than the Jade Cutter as a universal weapon. If you're not sure what the Haran does, most people just like immediately write this weapon off because they think the Jade Cutter is better. The reality is not so much. When we look at the Haran is a 33 crit chance weapon with 608 base attack. The Jade Cutter is a 44 crit rate weapon. On paper, Jade Cutter seems better. Passive for the Haran is 12 elemental damage bonus. The passive for the Jade Cutter is pretty much essentially like 20% to 24% attack, somewhere in there, right? 20 to 22, somewhere there. And if you had to choose between those two passives, just the passives themselves, most people choose elemental damage bonus over attack, because elemental damage bonus is good for a lot of different characters versus just attack being only good for attack characters. And the Jade Cutter does have an HP bonus as well, so it can also double for an HP bonus. The problem with it is the Jade Cutter as a weapon doesn't have percentage damage, and percentage damage works really well in the current state of the game and will always be good for future states of the game. Okay, that's a more future-proof ability as elemental damage, okay, because every type of elemental damage is useful, whereas the stat being HP or attack may not be as useful as we see with elemental mastery based characters right now and a lot of other characters. And if you want to use this weapon on Alhaitham, yes, it's quite good. The other part of this weapon is it also boosts your normal attack damage by 40% in addition to that too. So if you end up getting any normal attack character, it's quite good. The problem with this weapon, though, is it is a crit chance weapon, so it's not good for cryo characters like Kaya, who would be better off using Mist Splitter. The better universal weapon, of course, being the Mist Splitter, being the overall best universal weapon between all of the weapons, but the Haran has a very good specialization when it comes to normal attacks. Personally, I think this weapon's great. I love this weapon. I also have the Mist Splitter on all my accounts, and I end up choosing the Haran a lot of times on my Ayato, and I can use this weapon on potentially Alhaitham in the future if I wanted to as well. So for any normal attacking sword character, this weapon will be good. No matter what, whoever comes out, this is always going to be good for any normal attacking sword character, period, because it's elemental damage and normal percentage damage on the weapon. Okay, looking at the Engulfing Lightning. The Engulfing Lightning is one of those weird, overrated, underrated weapons where like you overrate the weapon because you think you really need it for, you'll be really good for getting for Xiangling or using it for Raiden Shogun. But the problem with this weapon is it's a really niche weapon. It's super niche because the weapon, if you think about it, is energy recharge and attack percentage. So it's a super niche weapon for a character that relies on both of those two mechanics. The flip side is you can use it on Xiangling, and everybody has Xiangling. So I don't think this weapon's gonna be super great outside of those two characters, and then maybe Shenhe. But there's other 5-star options that are better than this that are off on base banner that are better. So Engulfing as a weapon, I like having it on my whale account, but I do realize that the other weapons in the game are probably a little better. So if you're wondering if you should pick up the Engulfing Lightning, my personal opinion is I'd rather have a Staff of Homa, I'd rather have a Calamity Quill, I'd rather have another specialized weapon versus the Engulfing Lightning for Raiden. And if you were a player who's looking for damage on your Raiden, you shouldn't be summoning on this banner anyways, because you should be summoning for Constellation 2, because Constellation 2 is better than summoning for the Engulfing Lightning for damage. Okay, the other thing about this banner, which is really, really unfortunate for a lot of people that are looking to summon this banner, is the 4-stars are awesome. Okay, so we have the Favonius Spear, which is great on a lot of different characters. We have the Sacrificial Fragments, which is great. The Akomaru, which is great for Beidou. Who else is it good for? Good for Eula too. The Moyun's Moon, which is the best damaging bow for any elemental burst character. If you want to do DPS on Farazan, you want to do on Venti. It's good for Sarah. Any DPS elemental burst based character, it's the best. As far as the other weapons go, yeah, Lion's Roar sucks. Not good at anybody, unfortunately. But it's good for like one-shot nuke builds for Xingqiu, but like beyond that, not really. All in all, the weapon banner looks fire, but unfortunately, I would have to say, because this weapon, even though this weapon looks fire, I have seen some future intel, and the future intel says, holy shit, in comparison to this amazing banner. So if you're looking for what to do, I would recommend realizing that next patch has the Lantern Rite Festival. And the Lantern Rite Festival involves leeway characters. And with the leeway characters, there could be very, very unique characters that, are, specific to leeway. Last year was Ganyu, Zhao, Zhongli, and what was the last one? It was Shenhe, right? Now, between all the characters that are available and possible characters, the likelihood characters could be even better now that Yelan exists, right? And because Yelan came much later, she could be integral to the story with characters like Zhao, because there was a Twitter request in 2.6. There could be other characters that haven't showed up for over a year, like Hu Tao, that could really, really good use a rerun that you could have been waiting for a super long time. So if those characters come out, we know that these 3 characters that are kind of in need of a rerun at this point, also Shenhe, we'll touch on her in a little bit. But if it's these 3 characters, that means that you're going to get the Aqua Simulacra, which is the best bow for overall universal use in the game. The Staff of Homa, which is the best overall universal spear in the game. And the Jade Spear, which is the best base banner weapon. But, you know, not a great weapon, but, you know, one of those 3. So that the next weapon banner could involve 2 of those 3 weapons in a very, very high tier weapon banner. Also, Alhaitham's weapon is rumored to be one of the best weapons in all of Genshin Impact coming out next patch. So if it's all of those weapons, you could have insane weapon banners next patch. No matter what, there's going to be at least one guaranteed insane weapon banner if those characters are on the banners. Okay. Worst case scenario, there's a Shenhe rerun with its Calamity Queller. And I've done some testing on Calamity Queller. It's still pretty good on Zhao, on a lot of other characters. Calamity Queller is quite solid. I was very surprised to know that it was it's actually good on Zhao, and it's good on a lot of other characters in Genshin too. So Calamity Queller is a high tier weapon because of the base attack on that weapon is ridiculous, and you can really boost a lot of characters with the amount of attack on that thing. So it's quite good. Looking at the other characters in here, the only other character that can land on this banner is Zhongli, and seeing how we just got an arc on this patch, it's highly unlikely that Zhongli is going to be on this banner. He'll probably be on the following banner or a future banner after that. Zhongli is probably not next banner. The reason being is they don't typically run Archons back to back because Raiden Shogun is here, and they're probably not going to run Zhongli right after that. They're going to wait a patch and then drop a Zhongli after that. So I'd say Zhongli happening is low possibility, but you know, it could happen. And he's the only weapon I would really be wary of. But beyond that, that's why I would save. If you're looking to get Raiden, I would save because the future weapon banners are looking super spice. And the characters coming out next patch are very highly coveted for a lot of players looking for reruns. And when it comes to the characters, Hu Tao and Yelan, a lot of people talk about Constellation 1 on both of these characters, which are both pretty decent. So, yeah, as much as I want to say that you should summon for Raiden Shogun and Ayato, I think a lot of players that are looking to get the even better banner next time probably should skip. But, you know, there's always Wallet Sama. Have a great day, guys.